the media coverage of this thing is just about what you would expect it to be. So the New York Times says, Mr. Pompeo did not present any evidence to back up the assessment of Iran's involvement. The assertion is certain to further fuel tensions between the Trump administration and Iranian leaders. See, it's not the Iranians bombing things that fuels tension. It is the Trump administration responding to the bombing of things that fuels the tension. You see, Iran puts mines on ships and blows holes in them and sets them on fire, and people have to evacuate. And then Trump gets mad about it. But it's the Trump getting mad about it part that I think is really the problem. And that's what the media thinks. That's where the big problem really is. The sarcasm font there is very strong. And then the New York Times says, the assertion is certain to further fuel tensions between the Trump administration and Iranian leaders, which have been at heightened levels since early May, when the White House announced military movements in response to what American officials have said is an increased threat from Iran. So again, twice in one paragraph, the New York Times basically suggests that America's response to Iranian aggression is what causes the Iranian aggression. You get the timeline wrong here, guys. Okay, Iran got militant, and then we put 1,500 additional troops into the region. Iran has been bombing things, and then we have been responding to the bombing. They're now using cycle of violence language they usually only reserve for the Israelis when the Israelis are being hit by unprovoked rocket assaults. Now they're using it on the Trump administration. So the Iranians bomb stuff, Trump gets mad. Trump's anger caused the Iranian bombing. What, do you have a time machine? How exactly did this work? Well, there is a little bit of tape that we have seen that has been released of apparently the Iranian Navy in the SS Minnow from Gilligan's Island approaching a larger ship and removing one of the mines that was on it. This is before the attack. It's black and white footage. There's no sound on it because it's security footage. The Iranian Navy, needless to say, is not exactly the world's most powerful Navy. And the fact that we have been allowing them to basically bully us in the Persian Gulf for the past several years, going all the way back to the Obama administration, really is pathetic. You remember there was that incident in which the Iranian Navy hit a U.S. vessel and then basically took a bunch of Americans prisoner. And there were pictures of the American prisoners on their knees with their hands behind their head. It was quite humiliating, but since Obama was president, it was great. And that was the way the media covered it. It was evidence of President Obama's tremendous diplomatic abilities that we were able to get those American soldiers out of Iran. Listen, we should be able to tell Iran to release our soldiers whenever we please, considering the fact that, again, their Navy is made up of ships that barely fit inside my son's bathtub. I mean, the Iranian Navy is not exactly well known for it. It ain't the British Navy, okay? It doesn't rule the globe. Okay, but it is amazing to watch as folks on the left claim that Trump is trying to manipulate everybody into war. Again, do you really think that Trump wants to go to war in Iran? Do you think this is something that Trump desperately needs? Trump hates the idea of going to war in Iran. He has said so over and over. There's infighting inside the administration over what exactly should be done about Iran. But the Obama administration, folks, they're now pushing the lie that this is being manipulated into war. Oh, it's just like when Bush and with WMD and blah, 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 blah. Here's Ben Rhodes, who's a damned liar, especially on Iran. He tweets out, this definitely feels like the kind of incident where you'd want an international investigation to establish what happened. Huge risk of escalation. Ben Rhodes, well, you have a seat, my friend. Ben Rhodes, the national security advisor to Barack Obama, was the guy who openly admitted that he lied to the American people about the incipient moderation of the Iranian regime. Basically, in 2009, there was a near Iranian revolution, again, to overthrow the Iranian government, and Barack Obama sat by and allowed people to be slaughtered in the streets without any level of support other than a few tepid public statements. And then he made out that the Iranian regime was on the verge of a turnaround. And if only we paid them billions of dollars in cash, if only we opened up their economy by allowing them to develop, quote-unquote, peaceful nuclear power. Because if there's one thing that Iran, one of the most oil-rich nations on earth, needs, it is nuclear power. It has nothing to do with developing a nuclear weapon that they have been seeking for decades at this point. If only we did that, then they would come around, then they would moderate. And they were about to moderate, according to Ben Rhodes. Ben Rhodes went out there and he lied to the American people over and over. And he said that the Iranian government was on the verge of moderation, that Hassan Rouhani was a difference. He was a different kind of person than Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. And now the Ayatollahs were finally coming around. If only we were nice to them and stroked their buttocks in precisely the proper way by giving them money and allowing them to re-enter the family of nations. Of course, all of that was a lie. And now here is Ben Rhodes, who actively admitted to falsifying narratives about Iran to the American people, saying that the Trump administration is falsifying narratives about Iran in order to what? Bomb Iran? Like we want to go to war with Iran? Now, here's the reality. Next time, if they hit an American ship, if there's any situation in which they hit an American flag vessel, we should do exactly what we did to the Iranian Navy all the way back in 1988. According to History on the Net, this is a pretty good description of what happened. There's something called Operation Praying Mantis. Western and Allied navies participated in the Persian Gulf tanker war during the mid to late 1980s, protecting oil tankers from attack by Iranian small craft. In April 1988, the frigate Samuel B. Roberts hit a mine, sustaining heavy damage but no casualties. Physical evidence proves what was already apparent. The mine came from Iran. In response, Enterprise and her escorts, with a surface action group, launched Operation Praying Mantis, attacking Iranian facilities in the Gulf on April 18th, the 46th anniversary of the Doolittle raid. Primary targets were two Iranian oil platforms that offered a base for Revolutionary Guard speedboats harassing reflagging Kuwaiti tankers. Marines helicoptered onto one platform, leaving explosives to disable the facility. In response, the Iranians deployed Swedish-built Boghammer speedboats threatening transiting tankers. Two Enterprise intruders intercepted the boats, dropping rockeye cluster bombs that destroyed one Boghammer and holed another. Meanwhile, one of Iran's fast La Combattante class frigates exchanged missiles with two U.S. ships coming off second best. Iran's Jashan sank with heavy loss of life. Shortly thereafter, an Iranian frigate sortied, firing SAMs, the surface-to-air missiles, at nearby A-6s. The intruders combined with the destroyer to smother the 1,100-ton Sabalon with Harpoon missiles and later laser-guided bombs. She drifted away unfired and was towed to port for repair. During the day, the Iranian Air Force launched two pair of F-4 Phantoms. Neither could intervene. The first two diverted when illuminated by a destroyer's fire control radar. The second set was engaged by a guided missile cruiser, damaging one of the American-made fighters and forcing its withdrawal. In all, Praying Mantis destroyed an Iranian frigate, a gunboat, three speedboats, and damaged another frigate. A Marine Corps helicopter crashed during the operation with two flyers killed in the accident. So the only Americans who died were thanks to basically mechanical failure. And some 56 Iranians were killed in the operation. And basically we sank their entire Navy in like a day. So when people talk about this would break out into all-out war, what would happen if the United States took harsh military action? What would happen is that we would sink all of their tiny little boats in the Persian Gulf. That's what would happen. Because it turns out the United States is the most powerful military in the history of the world, and it is not particularly close. And it's certainly not close when you compare it to a second-rate naval power, third-rate naval power like Iran. We're not even talking about the Iranian land army, okay? The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps is very large. I mean, it's like a couple of million people. It's very, very large. But you know what is not particularly large or particularly strong is the Iranian Navy. They're mosquitoes, and they're harassing. And if they approach American ships at any point, we should just blow them out of the water.